Hi, I'm Garrett with IDC Woodcraft, and welcome to this video where you and I are going to do a deep dive review into the Longmill MK2 series CNC routers. If you're in the market for a CNC router, then by the time you're done with this video, you're going to know everything there is to know about the Longmill MK2 CNC routers. We are going to cover these machines from head to toe, from the company that ships them to you and that designs them and makes them, to the machine itself, the things that come with it, and finally I'm going to talk to you about the cost of these things, which, considering these things, how robust they are and that they're metal frame machines, even I was surprised at the cost. But we'll get to that one a little bit later. Now you might notice that this video is just a little bit longer than your average review video, and that's because I'm assuming that because you are on a review video, you're relatively new to this CNC router space and seeing all the cool, amazing things that people make on these machines, and you want a piece of that action yourself. Now maybe make something for yourself or your family, your friends, maybe even start a little CNC business out of your home. So I'm figuring you're in the research phase and probably a little confused because there are a lot of machines out there, and sometimes we're not really sure exactly what we need to be looking for and staying away from, and a lot of times people don't know some other things that they might want to consider while they're shopping for their machine. So in this video, I'm not just going to review the Longmill for you, but I'm also going to teach you some of the stuff that you might want to be considering in your shopping. Now, I want to take a minute to introduce myself to you. My name is Garrett Fromme, and I am the founder and CEO of IDC Woodcraft. IDC Woodcraft is a CNC router bit company. It provides to you the tooling that you will put inside your CNC router that is going to carve out those amazing projects that you are going to be making very soon. Now, as you can tell, I've been around a little while, got gray hair, receding hairline, I got a bald spot going on there. My career goes like this. In the first 20 years, I was a journeyman CNC machinist. And basically what that means is I was an expert when it came to CNC machines. And I ultimately had the privilege of selecting million-dollar CNC machines for some of the companies I worked for, and had the privilege of actually writing million-dollar checks. You want to talk about something kind of cool. In my second 20 years, I was a design process engineer. And what I did was I designed manufacturing equipment for companies that did high production stuff. So I've got a really keen eye for good machine builds in machines and in CNC routers. Along the way, I was a volunteer firefighter and a volunteer emergency medical technician. I rode in the back of ambulances with people who got hurt. You know, save the day kind of thing, and unfortunately, sometimes I couldn't save the day. My hobbies along the way were camping, hiking, canoeing, and woodworking. So when I left the workforce, it was pretty natural to get into CNC routers to start making some wood projects that I used to make by hand. And because I have so much skill in the CNC area and the heart of a teacher, started this YouTube channel for you to teach you as a beginner how to become really good with the CNC stuff, make your journey a lot easier. So on this channel, there are a lot of videos about how to design your projects, take that design over to your CNC router, set it up properly, and of course, how to use the CNC router bits that you're going to be using. So you might want to consider subscribing just on that note. Now, in my time, I also started 3 successful companies. The first was I rebuilt machines for other companies in my garage. That was very cool. The second one was a medical billing business that I started for my wife, Barbara. She worked for a doctor's office taking care of the insurance billing, and she wanted to be home with the kids, so I started a home-based business for her. And that was doing really well until Barbara got cancer. And unfortunately, 2 years later, Barbara passed away. That was, of course, really, really hard. Sometime later, I started the company IDC Woodcraft, which is now becoming one of the fastest growing CNC router bit companies in the home CNC router space. So that's actually really cool. So that's about me. And now we're going to get into the Longmill CNC router, and we're going to start right from the top by talking about the company, and then from there we will get down into the machine. So let's go. The Longmill MK2 series CNC routers is designed, built, and shipped to you by a company called Sienci Labs. Sienci Labs is owned by 2 young engineers, Andy Lee and Chris Thorogood. They started the company about 9 years ago while they were in college studying to become engineers, which from my perspective as an entrepreneur says a lot about their entrepreneurial spirit and their character. Now, when they started CNC Labs, they started with the idea that they wanted to build a good quality CNC router that was affordable to you and be able to rely on the machine to give you good quality cuts and last you a long time. And they have succeeded at that, which you will find out a little bit later in this video. Now, the Longmill MK2 series CNC router is like a third generation CNC router that they have created. There was another machine, and then they created the first generation Longmill MK1, and now they have the Mark II, and that's what MK stands for, Mark. I actually have both. I have the MK2 30x30 here, and the MK1 30x48, which is actually a hybrid. It's got an extension kit on it that is a derivative of the MK2 series. So it's actually a really strong machine. We'll talk about that one a little bit later. They have actually 3 sizes of machines, and we'll get into that in the next section of the video. The Longmill MK2 CNC router comes in 3 different flavors: vanilla, strawberry, and chocolate. Now, 3 different sizes. The 12x30, the 30x30, which is what you see right here, and then the 48x30, which is what I'll show you in just a moment. Now, each one of these sizes represents the cutting area of the CNC router. In order to help you understand these different sizes and what these numbers mean, the 12x30, 30x30, and 48x30 and the MK2 CNC routers, those are representations of the working area of the machine, or the areas that it can actually carve, which are generalizations because each one can actually carve slightly larger than the number that they assigned to the name. For example, this piece of cardboard is what the 12x30 cuts, and that actual cutting area is 14 inches deep by 32 inches wide. And you can tell by the scale of my hand that that is actually a fairly good piece of project that you can work on. Now we're going to get to the 30x30, which is the machine right here. In order to get an idea of the cutting area of that, I have to take off my board that makes it look pretty to expose my well-worn spoil board. A spoil board is the underlying surface where your project gets clamped down to, and it is a soft material, and you want that when you're cutting projects out where it won't damage the CNC router bit. So you can see I have a cut around just like this for a welcome sign that I made, like that. So that's what a spoil board is for, and I have spoil board designs for the 30x30 and for the 30x48. If you want to get them, I have them on my Etsy store. I'll give you information for that later on. So this is the 30x30, which has a cutting area of 32 inches wide by 33 inches deep. Now you can see it is significantly larger than this. The good thing about this, and why I recommend larger machines, is because then you can do a much larger project in one setup. You can see this is a pretty good sized working area of the machine where you can carve out some pretty big project. And finally, you have the 48x30 Longmill MK2 CNC router. Now, this one is actually a hybrid. It's the MK1 with the expansion kit on it that effectively makes it a 48, and it has the MK2 bar across it, but it still has the components of the MK1. However, the size of the machine is still pretty much the same when it comes to the cutting area. The actual cutting area of the 48x30 is 34 inches deep by 50 inches wide. And in order to get an idea of the working size of the 48x30, here I am laying inside the working space of the machine. So you can see you can cut a very large area and make some very cool signs. Now, these are really good when you're doing projects like lake projects with what they call epoxy pours, where you can make really large ones. And by the way, that's an excellent business to get into, making lake signs for lake houses. People who have second homes on lakes, they really like those signs. And now you understand the difference of the Longmill MK2 series CNC routers. You have the vanilla, which is the 12 by 30, cuts an area about like that. And then you have the strawberry, which is 30 by 30, cuts an area about like that. And then you have the chocolate of the bunch, which is this guy here, the 48 by 30, cuts an area about like that. A ton more real estate that you can make some pretty awesome projects on. Now, we're done with this segment. We're going to move on to the next deeper dive into the Longmill MK2 series routers. But before I do want to talk to you about something that I hope that you will take into consideration while you're shopping for the CNC router that you're going to get, whether it's this one or whatever brand. And it has to do with the sizes that you're looking at. Now, here's what happens often. We tend to focus on the budget first and let that dictate the size of the machine that we can get. However, I want you to take into consideration two things. And the first one is something I call PROI. That's called personal return on investment. Now, I want you to watch this video of the Longmill running around this project, dancing around these curves. It's almost mesmerizing, like watching a campfire, and there's not a worry in the world. And this is exactly the feeling that you get every time you've got a project on your machine and you're watching it carve out. And I want you to think about doing that over and over and over again for years to come. When we're saying, this is my budget, so I have to stay in that budget, think about the return on investment in your personal enjoyment that you're going to have for years to come, literally years. The machine will pay for itself in joy and fulfillment. So when it comes to selecting your machine, if you possibly can, let your budget expand a bit, even if it pinches a little bit, because you're going to enjoy much more your CNC router experience with the bigger machine. But the other thing that is important is what you could potentially make down the road. You see, when we're first getting into this and we're just thinking, I just want a CNC router, right? There's this really strong emotional drive you have for many reasons. Maybe you're hating the 9 to 5 and you just want to build your own thing, so you want to do a business, or you're retiring and you didn't quite set yourself up so well financially and you have to start a business. You have to generate some kind of revenue. You don't want to worry about money anymore, and you want something that you can call your own, or you're just retiring and you're just like, I want my own thing now. Or maybe you just want a challenge, or maybe you're just bored. Who knows why you're looking at this, but I can tell you there's a deep emotional draw to it because of the creativity. And here's what happens. So we make these things, we watch it dance around on the machine, when we pull it off the machine and we are just like, wow, I made this. You made it. And then what do? Because we're so proud of it, we show other people because we want them to see what we can do now. And here's what inevitably happens. Eventually, whether you're thinking of going into business or not, someone is going to come up to you and say, can you make this for me? And they're going to have some kind of idea, and your machine is this big and their idea is this big. And you have to say no, because you're constrained by the tunnel vision of the budget right there. That is exactly why I got the 48 by 30. Because I found that the 30 by 30 was too restrictive. There were jobs that I couldn't do, even for myself and family. And one of the things that I want to do is a nice, large, 3D, wavy American flag. And I want you to think about that on a 32-inch wide piece of wood. That's tiny. I want a real American flag that's going to be 4 foot wide and 3 foot tall. When it comes to a project like a carved American flag, I am not going to be restricted to the size limitations of the 30 by 30. It's going to be big, it's going to be beautiful, wavy, and it's going to be personalized for my son-in-law, Andy, who was in Afghanistan twice and in combat both times. The picture you're looking at right now is when he was leaving for his second deployment, and the woman is my daughter, and the kid next to them is my first grandson. When Andy got back from his second deployment, we were sitting down and having a beer, and he started sharing some of his military stories with me. And then he said, "Garrett, the time I was most afraid was this second deployment. We were out on patrol, and I was in the lead. And we started to receive fire from a hillside up and to the left. I had a stone wall right next to me, so I ran around behind it to get cover. And then I started to receive fire from that side. And he said, if I didn't get out of there right now, I was never getting out of there. So I ripped all my gear off, threw down my weapon, and ran as fast as I could for cover. And thank goodness he made it unscathed. He's got a little PTSD from that, but he's okay. My daughter's not a widow. Grandkids have their dad. Got another one on the way. But I think it's kind of cool that we can make projects like a carved American flag, and we can personalize it specifically for people. A lot of people make the American flag for their parents who were in the service or for their kids who were in the service. There's something really fulfilling when you can make something that meaningful. You'll also find that a lot of people like to make carved, personalized American flags for the other services as well, such as fire and law enforcement and emergency medical. Of course, that's not all that we carve on CNC routers, but the idea is that you can create anything you want. There's one other thing I want to share with you before I kind of get back to this review, because I kind of got sidetracked, was an email that I got from a CNC creator. Someone who just got into it and apparently was in the service. So I create a lot of videos to not just teach you how to do this, but encourage you to do it, because it is really personally rewarding to be able to create carved things that just come from your mind, your heart, your spirit. This is what this person said. He said, "Garrett, you have helped this disabled vet with my PTSD than all the pills and therapy ever has. You have given me a reason to keep going that I had lost." This email really summarizes the experience of having a CNC router. We're just going to call the author of the email John. Now, John is a vet. He served our country, and he struggled with PTSD, going to therapy, taking antidepressants, and apparently nothing was working. Over time, just kept going downhill. And from what I gathered in that email, that somewhere deep inside of him, it's just kind of losing the sense of purpose in life, the will. I don't even know how to explain it. However, he found CNC routers, and I could tell from that email that completely turned him around. What happened to him? Well, before I talk to you about what I think happened to him, we all have a little piece of John in us, where we feel like something's missing, and it really starts to show up in life when we get near retirement, when we start realizing we're going to be stepping out of the workforce and not matter so much to the world anymore. And also, as we just sit around in retirement, we twiddle our thumbs. It's like, there's got to be something I can do that's going to keep me interested and challenged. We all want challenges, and CNC routers is a beautiful space to be able to do that. What happens is you release your creative energy that's been kind of stifled inside all your life. At least that's the way I feel. Where you have this idea, then you sit down at a computer, work it up, and then take a piece of wood and put it on the CNC router and press this go button. And then, like this feather that you're seeing carved out that I was creating some time ago for a feather inlay, it's just so satisfying to watch your idea that you worked on actually come into real life. And then there's this overwhelming sense of deep satisfaction when you get the project done and you have something as beautiful as this feather inlay that was just an idea before. Now, I have talked to many CNC creators, and there's one thing that is a common thread with every single one of them when they give projects to other people. They've all said, when I see that beam in their eye, and they're really, I can tell that they really enjoy and like what they received, and they're giving me a whole bunch of thank yous. I don't know if it's selfish or not, but I feel a deep, deep sense of pride about it. And this is what the CNC space is all about. That sense of pride is not selfish. It's natural. We should feel good for making things that make other people feel good. So I sidetracked a little bit in this review, but I thought this was really important to share this and to maybe help you understand, because I think that when we start to look at something like this, we're looking around going, I'm trying to find something, and we get drawn into the CNC router space. I believe that that's that creative energy inside of us that wants to get out and start creating. And the CNC router just happens to be where your inner self is saying, that's where I want to go. And that's why I encourage people who are looking into this to dive in, whether you get an MK2 or not. In this part of the video, we are going to start looking into the Longmill. You and I are going to take a tour around this machine, and I'm going to show you how this thing is built and what the different components do on it. When you order yours, it's going to come to you in a big box. And when you get that box, you're going to know that you have a rock solid machine simply by the weight of the box. When you open that box up, there are other boxes inside, and those boxes contain the parts that you are going to be putting together to build up your Longmill MK2. Now, some people are kind of intimidated when it comes to assembly of this kind of contraption. Let me assure you that the Longmill and its design and assembly has been so well thought out that the instructions are something my 8-year-old grandkid can follow. Do you know those Lego kits that those kids get where they turn the page and it says, put this block here, and then you go to the next picture, put this block here. This is exactly how Longmill took this down to keep this super simple for us. What you're looking at right now is their website instructions, which is where you'll go to when you start building your machine. And you can see it is very simple. Everything is super clearly drawn out. I was actually looking for errors in it, and I could only find one spot where I got a little bit confused for about a minute. Literally, that was it. It was just really a nice, pleasant experience putting it together with those instructions. You will get tools with it, not all of them, but the basic tools that you need. The rest of them are listed in the instructions of what you'll need, which are basic household tools that you will most likely already have. When you buy your Longmill MK2, this is what you get with your base unit, regardless of the size that you order, whether it's a 1230, 3030, or 4830. You will get this machine right here, minus the trim router. Now you might think that's a little bit odd, but we'll talk about that in just a moment, because it's actually really good. Then you'll get the control box that drives your router around, coordinates all the motions. You'll get a power switch, and you'll get the power supply. So what is it about not getting the actual thing that does the cutting with your Longmill? It's actually a convenience for us. You see, some people like me already have the Makita trim router in their shop. It is a very common trim router to have in many workshops. I have 3 of them, and 2 of them are dedicated. The other one is not. However, I wanted a dedicated trim router for my Longmill, so I went ahead and added that as an option. For me, it's a matter of convenience as well. Just get the thing and be done with it. Now, some people have asked me in the past, does the Longmill accept a spindle? Longmill does not provide a spindle for the Longmill MK2. However, they do have the ability in the control box where you can actually plug into it so that you can run a spindle with your Longmill. On the CNC router controller, there is a plug-in where you can add a spindle if you want to. Right now I am plugged into the optional laser module for the laser engraver, which is this guy right here. I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. Also, on the control panel, you have a jack for the touch probe that will set your router bit 000 point. I'll talk to you about that later on. You can also add coolant control if you want, in case you want to cut brass or aluminum, something like that. And then they also have connections for limit switches. Now, limit switches are something that you would want to add to the machine if you are going to get into a CNC business and make a variety of different projects. What a limit switch does is it creates a central home position that all the other positions, well, let's say you have fixtures around there that you'll use here and there. You'll use this fixture today, that one tomorrow, that one the next day, that one the next day. You want a home position that you can reference those two locations from, and that's what limit switches enable you to do. If you're thinking about getting into CNC business, then I do recommend that you get the limit switch add-on. If you're just doing this as a hobby and you don't expect to be making a lot of stuff for business, then you don't need the limit switches. When it comes to motion on a CNC router, there are two important components that have to be there. Number one is the motor that actually moves things around, and then number two are the actual elements that pull the things around that the motors are somehow attached to. So first of all, let's talk about motors. In CNC routers, you'll either see 3 motors or 4 motors. So you'll always have one that's on the Z carriage that moves it up and down. You'll have one on the gantry, which is right there, that moves the Z carriage back and forth. When it comes to the Y travel, which is bringing the gantry back and forth this way, you can have 1 or 2 more motors. So if I get in my angle just right, on the long mill we have 4 motors altogether, and here are the 2 that drive the gantry back and forth. This one here and that one there. Now, Longmill uses NEMA 23 stepper motors, which are the best motors in their class for this type of CNC router. But what's even more important than 3 or 4 motors is actually what's making everything move around. The element that's pulling the gantry back and forth, that's moving the Z carriage back and forth, and your Z motion up and down. So there are 3 different types of drive elements that you'll find on CNC routers. You have the belt drive, the screw drive, and the rack and pinion. Now, rack and pinion you will never find on a benchtop CNC router. That's for like super duty, robust work. You'll find that in industrial machines. Belt drives, on the other hand, are kind of the cheap way to go. They are timing belts, which you find a lot in your cars, so they are durable and can work. However, belts, they have to be at a certain tension, and they are more prone to skip a tooth on a belt. So timing belts have these little teeth on them, and if anything holds that up or causes some kind of resistance, the motor can literally jump a tooth, and that is going to ruin your project. I am a drive screw person. So there are 2 types of drive screws. There's the ball screw and the lead screw. Now, what's the difference between a ball screw and a lead screw? A ball screw is a very precise shaft with radiuses cut into it as a groove in a screw pattern along the shaft. And then it has a body that holds ball bearings, and those ball bearings ride in that slot. So as the screw turns, it pulls the machine back and forth. Ball screws are very precise, and you are going to find them in manufacturing environments wherever precision of motion is really important, like in CNC machining. Kind of like what you're going to be doing with your CNC router when you get yours and start making your amazing, awesome projects. Of course, your stuff's going to look a heck of a lot better. Now, the Longmill does not use a ball screw. It uses something called a lead screw, which is the other type of drive system I had told you about. This is what a lead screw looks like. And that's what drives the Longmill on all of its axes. The Y-axis, you have one on the left, and there's one on the right. That one is behind the dust guard that protects the screw from the dust. There's one on the gantry that drives the carriage back and forth, and there is one on the Z-axis right there. And this is the lead screw at work. Right now it's pulling the gantry forward. You can see it's pulling it pretty rapidly, and now it's bringing the carriage across the gantry. And then of course there's the Z-axis. The entire long mill is driven by lead screws attached to all the motors that we talked about. There, and the two back there. Rather than the lead screw being attached to a bearing housing with a bunch of ball bearings running through it, instead it uses a very simple type of nut, just like this. This is called an anti-backlash nut. And the lead screw passes through this threaded hole right there. And the reason it's called an anti-backlash nut is because every machine has a degree of play in it, meaning there's going to be some slop, no matter if you have a lead screw or you have a ball screw. Now I have to stop and call myself out on this when I use the word slop, and that doesn't sound very good, but that comes from my days as being not only a CNC machinist, but also a machine designer. It's lingo basically for something called backlash. And what backlash is whenever you have two components that are married together in some way to create some motion. For example, you have a bushing and you have a rod that moves back and forth through it, or you have a ball screw with a bunch of ball bearings in it and a housing and the screw, or whether you have a lead screw with a simple anti-backlash nut. In order for these components to move, there has to be a gap between them. Even if it's like super tiny, but that gap still exists, and that gap creates something called backlash, which is just a tiny degree of play that's going to exist in the machine. So you have to compensate for it. So in the case of the lead screw, they just came up with this simple little device, which is the anti-backlash nut, super cheap, off the shelf, and that's one of the reasons that Longmill has been able to put their machines into an extremely competitive space price-wise and still have a good rock-solid machine. The other good thing about this is the lead screw and using the anti-backlash nut, the CNC router here, it still holds its tolerances as far as its cutting, very consistent. Now the anti-backlash nut will be found right there. You notice that little screw right there, that's the adjustment that you'll make to tighten it up, and it's fastened by these two screws there, and of course you have it on the other side behind the dust shield there. They're going to be on the back of the Z carriage and also on the Z up and down movement. When you're carving your amazing project, you clearly want the machine to be running true at all times. So something has to guide all this movement and hold everything true. So on the Z axis going up and down, you see these two red caps right there. These are linear bearings, and they are square bearings or square blocks about that long, maybe 1.5 inches to 2 inches, and they are riding up and down on these linear bearing rails right there. Linear bearings are very common in your benchtop CNC routers. When the Z carriage is going sideways, it is running on a couple or 4 rollers behind the carriage. I'll show you. There are 2 on top, 1 right here and 1 right there, and then there are 2 on the bottom, and they run along this V rail here. So these are V-shaped. I can show you better here on the edge of the gantry because it's the exact same thing. You see these black wheels here. These are actually steel ball bearings with Delrin over top of it. Delrin is a hard machinable plastic that you will find in industrial use, and it has very high wear resistance, and you can see it's got the V cut in there. And if we come down and take a look at the rail itself, if I can get that angle to show you, the rail itself has a V shape right here, and so those wheels ride along the V shape. Now there are 2 on the bottom as well, and then there are a set of 4 over there. So one of the things that people have asked quite a bit is, do these things wear out? So they are considered a wear item, and if you order a Longmill, I suggest that you go ahead and buy them as a backup. They do sell them. However, I will say that I have been running the MK1 as like a 30 by 30 before I modified it to a 48 by 30. These are the original bearings, or the original wheels that have been riding on here for almost 2 years now. So as far as I'm concerned, they work just fine. Now one of the things I have noticed you'll start to see a little bit of black buildup on your V-shaped rail there. So that's some of the Delrin starting to wear off a little bit, and I have found a very quick and easy solution for that. I will take a piece of steel wool and lightly rub off the plastic or whatever it is that's built up there. Then I'll wipe it off and take a paper towel, put a little light oil on it, and let it soak into the paper towel. Then take the paper towel and rub it along all the V areas on all the rails, and that seems to stop the issue from showing up for 2 weeks to a month. And then when I start to see a little bit of black again, then I just repeat the process. I'm going to stop this review for just a moment because you and me, we've been hanging out for a little while now, as I've been telling you all about the MK2 CNC router. We're kind of chumming up as we're talking, but we're not done yet, so keep on hanging out. That you are hanging out is a good thing, because that tells me that you're a lot like me. You want to make sure that whatever you're going to get is the right machine for you. You want to have the confidence that it's going to be a good machine and it's going to last you for a long time. So just keep on hanging out. You're going to learn everything there is to know about the MK2. Also, if you are serious about getting into this amazing creative space of CNC routers, and I've got to tell you, it is amazing, especially when you make a project and give it to somebody else and you see that look in their eye and the joy in their face of something that's very personal to them and you created it. It kind of gives you a sense of significance and purpose and just this inner joy that you were a part of that. But if you are serious about getting into this, then you definitely want to subscribe to this channel, because the videos I create are for you as a beginner. My intention is to take you from the absolute zero level all the way up to making amazing projects as fast as possible. So subscribe to the channel. Just below this video is the subscribe button. Go ahead and take a moment to click that. And if you feel like you're starting to get something out of this video, learning about the MK2 CNC router, please hit the thumbs up button. Finally, most of the videos I create are with the Longmill MK2. And because I do that, Longmill has been generous enough to give me what's called an affiliate link. And what that is if you use that link, which takes you directly to their website, it gets associated back to me. And when you buy your MK2, I get credit for it, and that enables me to buy a hamburger and a coffee. So I want to ask that when you get your MK2, that you use that link. I will have it down in the description. And then I'll be able to have a cup of coffee and a burger. So thank you for using that link. Let's get on with this review. We got some ways to go yet, so hang in there. We're going to get to know each other even more. Sorry about your luck. Let's go. In this segment, I'm going to talk to you about rigidity. When it comes to CNC routers, your number one enemy is lack of rigidity. If a machine is not strong and rigid, then what's going to happen is your cuts are going to look choppy. And so as you're doing your research in machines, you always want to look for a machine that has a good, solid structure to it. Otherwise, you're going to have problems down the road, and it's going to be very, very frustrating, especially when you're trying to make this really cool project that you designed and the cuts just don't look good and you're not sure why. Many times it comes down to either something's not tight on the machine or the machine simply isn't rigid enough. Now, Longmill has a very interesting construction here that you don't traditionally find on your benchtop CNC routers. Most CNC routers have a bar or two that span from that end of the machine all the way to this end of the machine, and there's nothing in the middle to support it. Same with the gantry. You'll have a bar or two that spans from this side all the way over to that side, and so the components right around on those bars. The bars are technically suspended or bolted from one end and then also from the other end, but in the middle there's no support. So the longer the span, the more opportunity there is for vibration to be set up while your CNC router is cutting. The same thing goes across the gantry. When you have bars suspended across the big span, you're also going to have opportunity for more vibration in the middle. However, Longmill has done something very different. You notice that there are feet in the middle, which is, I think, the only benchtop CNC router out there that has this concept of reinforcing any sense of play that you might find in the middle by attaching feet. Most CNC routers, you can't do that because the gantry is moving back and forth in that area. So this is one of the benefits of what Longmill did to make sure that they have that kind of structure in the middle. As an engineer, I can see that they actually paid attention to that. And how'd they work around it? They worked around it by using extrusions that were formed for the various elements. They have a cut in here for the lead screw, and they have, like I showed you before, the V going along here for the V wheels. Now on this part of the machine, the gantry is a little bit different shape in that extrusion. This is rectangular in shape, whereas this has multiple lines that go through here. From someone who has designed quite a few machines in their time, this is a really unusual design, and I can see that there's a lot of strength built into it. I'm just going to show you like this. This is the 48 by 30, and the span of the gantry on this is almost 5 feet. So to show you exactly what I mean, when an engineer is looking at this and seeing the strength of this, the rigidity that I'm talking about, so I can literally stand on this. So Chip, come up here and let them see me standing on this machine, and then I got my grip so I don't fall, right up here on the garage door rail. Hit that enter button and watch this thing. So we have 170 pounds on this machine right now, and it's just running along like there is nothing going on. So the point is, it's a damn strong machine. From an engineer's perspective, I knew I could stand on this machine just by looking at the structure and the way that the extrusions on these things are made. From an engineer's perspective, it's brilliant designing. One of the interesting things is you'd expect these machines to cost $2,000–3,000, and it's not. It's much lower. And I'm going to talk to you about the price now. But first, I want to talk to you about one other thing. The benchtop CNC routers, all of them, are classified as hobby machines. That's because there's no other terminology other than industrial CNC routers, and they are not industrial units. However, many people start businesses with the benchtop models out of their homes, and they get very successful with it. In fact, I teach a lot of CNC business on this channel, so if that's something you want to do, you might want to subscribe for that reason. Most CNC routers in this class are actually $1,000 more than the Longmill. Longmill set out to make an affordable router and a good solid one. So the next competitor, literally, of the 30 by 30 unit is about $2,200. And that's just for the CNC router. That's not including the other things that you need to get. Maybe the design software. If you don't use the freebie, use the Vectric software, which is what I use and what I teach you on this channel. The next nearest machine is $2,200. The 30 by 30 is actually right around $1,500. $2,200 to $1,500. It's when you get to the 30 by 48 that things really diverge. So this right here, when you get to a machine that's got a bed this size, it generally runs $4,000 and higher. The MK2 48 by 30 is a little over $1,700. So it's kind of a no-brainer, especially if you're kind of on a tight budget, but you do want to make sure you want to get a good machine. So some people ask me, why is the cost that low? That's just because they designed it simple, and they used structure rather than bulk to make the machine strong. In order to get your Longmill MK2 or whatever CNC router you end up getting to do what you want it to do, which is carve that amazing project that you've designed, you need to be able to interface with the CNC router. And you do that through the use of a control software. There's all kinds of them out there. However, I'm going to suggest that you use the one I'm about to show you in just a moment. It's called gSender, and it's written by Longmill. So the fact that it's written by Longmill, it is optimized for the machine. The one that Longmill wrote is actually really good, and even if you don't have a Longmill CNC router or get a different one, you may want to investigate getting this gSender software because it has such a clean interface and it's very easy and user intuitive. So I'm going to dive into it right now and show you exactly what control software is and why you need it and how it helps you set up your CNC router and get things going the right way. This is the gSender control software that will run your CNC router. Longmill wrote this for the community to create a very modern version that is up to date. So I'm going to run you through this real quick. The area, the big window with the grid in it, that's what they call the visualizer, and that's where you'll actually see what the CNC router is supposed to be doing. It'll give you a display, and I will show that to you in a minute, of how it's actually working. Then up in the upper right corner is what they call the location window, and that is the area where you are referenced from on your CNC router. Whenever you do a project design, it has a 0 point, and then everything works away from that 0 point. So if you look at the big visualizer screen, you see the red line coming left and right, and then the green line going up left and right as well, but they intersect in the middle. That's considered a 0 point. And then the numbers here are reflecting where your router bit is relative to that 0 point. Then below that, you have your manual interface, or what they call the jog control. And this is where you will actually move your CNC router around. You'll sometimes need to move it to the back out of the way so you can place your project piece on the router bed, or you need to use this to zero your project, or even bring the CNC router forward so that you can change a router bit. Then down below and to the right is where you'll set your router bit 0, and you'll do some other things. And then along the bottom of the screen is information that will be provided to you while the CNC router is running. So one of the things that's really nice with is, if you look in the upper left corner, there's a box with a green check. It says connected. When I pass over it, it says disconnect. So this is where you'll actually tell the software to connect with your CNC router. And this is one of the big, huge pluses with the gSender software relative to the other control software out there. gSender has this pretty interesting feature that most of the other control softwares that you can get do not have. It has an auto detect feature, meaning when you plug in your CNC router into your laptop and get your gSender fired up and you hit that button, it'll see where that router is connected to. Most of the other control software does not have that. So you have to get in there and install drivers, and you also have to sometimes change the COM ports in your computer. Basically, if you don't want to fiddle with the back end of your computer, if you're not computer savvy, then you want to get the gSender software because it's so super user friendly. So I always recommend the gSender software. So now what we're going to do is we are going to actually import a design on here so you can see actually how this works and how simple it is. So I'm going to go over to my design software. So I use the Vectric VCarve software. It's one of the best ones out there, and it's been out for a long time, and they're always improving it. And it is the one I recommend. So you can see on the screen right now, there is a design for the Maltese cross for a fire department. Since I used to be in the fire service and in EMS, or emergency medical services, I'm pretty partial to this kind of stuff. It always appeals to me at a deeper level, as it does to most other people who work in services like this. So I'm going to actually just run it real quick so you see what it looks like. And I have to switch over to my 3D. There we go. And that's what it looks like when it would be finished. So it's kind of a modern looking Maltese cross. But this always reminds me too of the dedication and loyalty that not just firefighters have, but those in emergency medical services, military, law enforcement, and the special bonds that we carry. And some of that bond comes from several things. Number one is the inner loyalty, that inner compassion, that drive to be something better than just ourselves and to give in a certain way that we're just drawn to do.
And then also by the we have to work together. And so that creates a bond, and we learn to trust each other. And that is one of the most important aspects of any of these services. And then, of course, the tragedies that we have to confront that sometimes make you feel like, I wish I could have done more. Why couldn't I have saved that person? I had that experience a couple times when I was in the fire service. One was a house fire that we were called to, and when the call went out, they also said that there's a child trapped in the burning house. So you can best believe if you worked in these services, you know how fast people move when they hear about a child being trapped. But I lived right across the street from the firehouse, and so I was over there within about a minute. I never got dressed so fast from a dead sleep. Got all the engines started up and all the doors open, and I couldn't believe how fast people were arriving at the firehouse.
My job was engineer, which meant that I was driving the fire engine and would be manning the pumps at the fire engine. It was my duty to make sure that the firefighters had charged hoses and had a constant supply of water. So when we get there, I would be at the fire truck the whole time. When we pulled down the street, it was very clear where this house fire was. The whole area ahead of us was glowing orange. Pulled up, and the fire chief had me stop where he wanted me to stop, which was right near a hydrant, maybe 2 houses down. And before I was even out of the truck, those guys were off the truck with their jump lines, which is a pre-charged or pre-set up hose line, and they were on their way. My job was to charge those lines and then get the fire hydrant hooked up and make sure that they have water pressure the whole time that they need it. Once I had the hydrant hooked up and had time to look over and see what was going on, these guys were still like just at the door trying to get in. There's so many flames coming out of the first story and second story of this house. It's one of those moments where you kind of know deep in your heart if there's somebody in there, they're not going to make it. But you don't let yourself believe it, especially when it's a child. And unfortunately, we did lose a child that night, a 4-year-old girl named Katie Wells. Those guys tried for a very long time, finally was able to get the flames down, and that's when we knew. And the chief made his rounds and let everybody know that there's nothing could be done. After a few hours and everything was settled down and all the duties were taken care of, we headed back to the fire station and do our normal cleanup duties. Very quiet. Everybody went home that night and nobody could sleep and nobody went to work the next day. They had a debriefing team come in the next day, which is basically a psychology group to help us work through it. And one of the times that happens once in a while in a service, fire, law, EMS, military, when tears just fly, they just flow. One of the hardest moments in the fire service for me. That's the story of Katie Wells, and that's the story of why this is so special to me. And if you were in any of the services, then I'm sure that you have your own stories and can absolutely relate to the losses, the camaraderie, the bonds. So anyway, thanks for hearing this story. 30 years ago is when that was. Moments like that you just don't forget. All right, let's get back to the review video.
Okay, so I've run this project and that's what it looks like. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to import the project into the gSender software. And as it comes in, so now you can see there's the fire department logo, at least some of it. There's some details that I didn't import in the toolpath, but those are the finer details. You can see the axe right here is not, you see the outline, but this is the way this is supposed to be set up. And then all I have to do is hit the start button. The machine will start to move and start to do its work, just like you're seeing here. And you can hear the noise of the machine. And what it's actually doing is the CNC router is just moving around but it is actually not cutting anything. That's because there's two components to a CNC router, basically. There's the CNC machine that does the moving around, and there is the router that actually does the cutting, which I have not turned on at the moment. So I want you to pay attention right here, and we're going to zoom in just a little bit. And you can see a little something moving around there, and that is the router bit and where this project would be cutting at the moment. So this is just some of the stuff that's going on. You can see down at the bottom it is showing information about what's happening, and we have some manual controls right here to slow things down or speed them up. So I'm going to stop the project.
I'm not going to dive any deeper into the control software here. It's not really necessary because I have many step-by-step videos for you as a brand new beginner to get you up to speed. But the whole point is to just give you an idea of the things that you can make. The Maltese cross, which I didn't make, but the vector is available to you. Something like a beer flight that I made for a local restaurant. Super simple Christmas block, which I give to you, this design and 6 others when you get the CNC router bit starter set from IDC Woodcraft. Just something I made, just farting around. I was checking out a router bit, a roundover bit, the word prosper. Then you get the things that you're more passionate about, like me. I'm a Jeep person all the way. Don't follow me, you won't make it. And it's the truth. Here's another one. I did a video to show you how to make a pizza peel, and I even give you the file for this. That's I have that on my website. So you get the idea that you can make pretty much anything you want. Now you understand the machine itself. You can literally stand on the machine, so you understand how strong it is, and the interface with it is very intuitive for a beginner, whereas many of the interfaces are not. And I got videos that tell you how to work with this. We're done with this segment of the video, and you and I have been hanging around together for about an hour now, so we're becoming pretty good friends. But we are not done yet. I'm going to talk to you about a couple of the options that you want to consider when you're getting your Longmill MK2, and then I would be remiss if I didn't talk to you about CNC router bits, exactly what my company does. Something you have to know anyway. I mean, after all, the CNC machine does the moving, but it's the bit that does the carving, so you have to get yourself set up with a few CNC router bits as well. So I will talk to you about that, and then we will wrap this up. Now, before we get on to the next segment, I was sharing my story about Katie Wells, one of the more painful times in the fire service when I did it years ago. If you were in any of the services, fire, EMS, law enforcement, or military, you're going to be very surprised. You are going to find so many of your brothers and sisters in the CNC creating community. You might want to join the CNC Entrepreneurs Facebook group, which is the group I formed. There's about 24,000 members in it right now, and a huge chunk of them are from the services. So I'll put a link down below in the description with every other link that I throw down there and all the other information that you're going to want to see after this video. So make sure after this video you go down and check that out. And please, when you get your Longmill MK2, please remember to use the link that I have, which is also down below. When it comes to ordering your Longmill MK2 CNC router, some things are optional, but you will seriously want to consider them. And the first one is the proximity switches or limit switches if you are getting into CNC business. I highly recommend that you get the limit switches. The other 2 items, which one of them I do not consider optional, I consider it necessary, is the touch probe, and the one that's a little more optional is the laser, which I'll talk about in just a moment. But the touch probe is the thing that's going to save you a ton of time. This is the tool that sets the 0 point of your CNC router bit. So we have 2 styles here, and you can get one or the other. This one is the standard corner touch probe. This one is the auto 0 touch probe. I'll show you that in a moment. The corner touch probe, if you look in the bottom, it has a little step here, and it actually sits in the corner of a project just like that. And then your router bit will come down and touch there, touch here, and that will set your router bit 0 point right on the corner. You can see here exactly how it works. Touching the top of the plate, setting the Z, then it's touching the left side of the plate, which is setting your X0 point, and then it moves over and touches the front of the plate, which sets your Y0 point. And when it's all done, it returns back to the top. And what it is doing is finding this exact corner on the project piece. So this is all cool, and it's the basic unit to get. You definitely want to get this when you order your Longmill MK2. Now, if you want to make the touch probing a little bit easier, then you want to go to the auto touch probe. Now, this works a little bit better than this one in that it's kind of hard to explain if you are brand new. But this, you saw, works by touching the four corners. But if you have a V-shaped bit just like this blade 60-degree V-bit, you may run into an issue where it doesn't come down far enough to zero properly. And because it's not round all the way around, it may come to one side and touch here, and the other side is going to touch there. The CNC machine is expecting to find a 1/4 inch diameter bit because that's the way you set the control up. This device doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what type of bit you use. It'll find the center of that bit. And you can see it working now where it is touching the bottom of the plate, and then it is coming over, touching the point of the V-bit on a very shallow angle. And it does it on all four corners, and that's the way it finds the center of the project. So that is the non-optional option that you want to get with your Longmill MK2. One or the other. I do recommend the Auto Zero. It works a lot better, and gSender will know that you're using the Auto Zero when you set it to that. And you'll find along the way the big benefit to this, where you don't have to make sure the software knows what size router bit you're using. This one, you just plug the router bit in. Now let's get on to the laser briefly, and we'll talk a bit about that. One of the cool things you can add to your CNC router is the laser engraver attachment. You can do this with most CNC routers. However, most of the time the CNC router companies don't have one specifically built to attach directly to their machine like Longmill has here. Here's what's so cool about laser engravers is you can do your carving with the router and then come in behind and engrave stuff on that. Let's say you are making a big wooden police badge and you're carving all the 3D details into it, and then you have that ribbon that's at the bottom of it, and you want to carve or engrave the number of the badge or the person's name and when they served, whatever. Laser engravers are an excellent way to add a lot of pop to that project. Generally, the lasers that you add to CNC routers are not meant to cut. They're meant to engrave on a project. However, you can see in this video, I am drawing out the name Samantha. And what I'm actually doing is cutting out on a piece of mat board. And you can see it's about a 1/16 of an inch thick. And actually looks pretty cool. So these lower power lasers actually can cut into projects. One of the other things that they're generally used for is engraving. As you can see in this hyper speed engraving that I'm doing of a lion, that looks very, very cool. This is some of the stuff that you can do. Clearly, I'm not showing you all the things that you can do with a laser, but just this little idea right here, you can see the detail that we can get out of a project like this just with a laser without doing any carving. Now I've got a little soot on this, and that's because I didn't have the power set right, but you can see this little lion is about 2 inches tall, and I still capture all the detail. So you can do some really, really cool things with lasers. So one of the things I do suggest if you get a CNC router, whether you get the Longmill MK2 or any other CNC router, is if they have a laser option with it, you want to probably get that and learn that in behind your carving. Now Longmill has one. This is what they call a 7-watt diode laser. Fairly powerful for a diode laser. They generally go up to 15 watts, but this is a 7 watt, still does a lot of stuff. With that laser, you will get the wire harness that attaches to the laser. And you'll get the control box, which is FDA set up, meaning it has a key on it, it's got the power switch, and it has a reset button that you have to engage. And of course, you get the glasses with it, and you'll get some different lenses. I won't get into those details here, but I will say that a laser gives you the ability to accent your projects in very, very cool ways that you can't normally do with the normal CNC router projects that you carve out, although those are really cool as they are. If you decide to get the Longmill MK2, then you might want to consider getting the laser beam as an option added onto it, or whatever CNC router that you get. I would say that I would at least make sure that that option comes with the machine that you end up ordering. And of course, you get a very cool pair of glasses. Well, my soon-to-be CNC brother or sister, we are almost done with this review of the MK2 CNC router. However, we do have one more thing that absolutely has to be covered when it comes to CNC routers. And then after we cover that, we are going to summarize this review, and then you and I are going to part ways. So the one thing that we absolutely have to talk about is something that every single brand new CNC router owner struggles with. And you will too, the minute you order your Longmill MK2 or whatever machine that you get. It is the CNC router bits. What router bits do you need to get? Like I said before, the CNC machine does the moving, but it is the bit that does the carving. And there are many different styles of CNC router bits and different configurations, and you need to eventually start to learn what these are for. But it's very confusing up front. And what you'll see, what I dealt with when I first got into CNC routers, and what everybody else deals with, is trying to find a good starter set of CNC router bits. When you ask in Facebook groups, you don't get a good solid answer from people, and the CNC router bit companies don't really educate you on this as well, unfortunately. In fact, when I first got into this, because I wasn't getting clarity on this, I ended up just guessing, and I have literally about $350 worth of CNC router bits sitting in my toolbox over there that never got used. And this is the story of almost every single brand new CNC router owner. So that is the whole reason IDC Woodcraft got started, because I know the pain that these people are going through and that you will go through. So the very first thing that I did when I started this company was put together what I call the most complete CNC router bit starter set on the planet, because I have not found another set that contains all the bits that you need to get started that will enable you to carve about 99% of the projects that you will design. Yes, in the future you will start getting other router bits to do other things. The IDC Woodcraft Complete CNC Router Bit Starter Set has everything that you need as a beginner to get started. And you will also get instructions as to why each one of these bits is what you need. But I take it one step further, because the next problem we have after that is, how do we set up the feeds and speeds of those router bits? You see, when the router bit is moving through the wood, it has an optimal speed or RPM that it needs to be turning at. And if it's going too fast, it'll burn up your bit. If it's going too slow, it'll burn up your bit, or you can break the bit. There's a lot of things that can happen, and we want to avoid that. So you need to know the feeds and speeds. And this is where most of the CNC router bit companies seem to fall short on, is providing that information for you right up front with your CNC router bits. So when you order the complete starter set of the IDC Complete Starter Set of CNC router bits, you will get a feeds and speeds table that tells you how to set it up. And I also include a database that you can install in your software, and I only provide that for certain design softwares, where it'll save you the manual entry. But I take it a step further, because I provide projects to you, starter projects, with instructions that tell you exactly how to work through these projects, so that you're not guessing along the way. You'll get a good foundation this way. And finally, the last thing that I give you is a complete list of all the videos on this channel, and it's sorted for you as a beginner. There are videos that tell you how to get your CNC router set up properly, and how to start learning the design software. And you will have easy CNC projects outside of the ones that I give you with the starter set. So this whole set was put together with you as a brand new CNC beginner in mind, because I don't want you to go through the same struggle I did and waste all that money on bits that you just really don't need. So I will put a link down below for that set, and I've got a video as well. I will also link that down below that kind of walks you through all the different types of CNC router bits and what they're for and what you want to be using right up front. Well, my CNC friend, you and I have been hanging around for about an hour and a half together as we've been talking about the Longmill MK2 CNC router. And now you know about everything I can teach you in an hour and a half about this machine. And you've learned a few other things along the way that you're going to need to know. There's control software and CNC router bits. And you're going to have to learn a little bit about woodworking. You don't have to be like a top-end skilled woodworker by any means, though. That's part of the fun about this whole thing, is you take on a new challenge, a new pursuit. And interestingly enough, you find a new passion along the way and purpose. That's what happened to John. You remember John, the vet who was suffering from PTSD. You know what PTSD is? It's being stuck in the past. That's it. It's just being stuck in a loop in the past. What happened to John was he just dove into CNC routers and he broke that loop. And now he's looking forward. When you're looking forward, moving forward, taking on a new challenge with purpose and passion, the past doesn't matter anymore. And there's nothing like having this idea and then you sit down at the computer, you start working it up, and time just stops. When that happens, you know you're in your zone. And you know you're doing something that you want to be doing that feels really, really good. What I want to talk to you about is, number one, don't let your budget hold you back. Because when you get your Longmill MK2 or whatever CNC router you get, you're going to fall in love with this whole creative process, and you're going to make things over and over and over again for years to come. The other thing you're going to find is the community of thousands of people strong. And you're going to be really surprised at how many people that are doing this, who are around my age, coming into retirement, have been retired for a little bit or have been retired for a long time. Or people are just looking for something to do, or maybe just looking for something to make some side money on. But really in the end, it's about creativity. Here's what I see from a lot of creators, or a lot of people who are thinking about this. They spend a ton of time studying this thing. Which machine should I get? And I got to learn all about it. I've talked to people that have been researching it for years, right? Years. We're just afraid to take the plunge into the unknown. And I remember the old days when I was on the fire service, right? There was no hesitating when a call went out. Like that one with Katie Wells, where we lost that 4-year-old in the fire. I didn't stop and wake up in the middle of the night because the alarm went off and have a cup of coffee thinking, do I really want to go to this fire? No, we were on it. And we never once thought, we're not going to save Katie. Same with those in the law enforcement. When some guy beat the crap out of his girlfriend, they didn't think, maybe I'm not going to arrest this guy because I'm afraid. Right? They were going for it. Or in the services, walking into combat. There's nothing that's going to stop us. And I think that somewhere along the line, we feel like we've lost our edge and our drive to take on a new challenge. But I want to tell you, that is something that holds you back. It keeps you locked into this anxiety of this lack of purpose and lack of passion. And you're just stuck. You do little things here and there to keep you occupied, but you're not really happy because you don't have that passionate thing. About 80% of the people that do this CNC router thing are in this age bracket, and about 80% are from the services. That's why so many people make the flags. So every day that you say no, that you hold yourself back because you're not sure you can work with the design software, you're not that good with computers, you don't know how to do woodworking. Every single day you hold yourself back from the opportunity of joy, of creating and reconnecting with those who were like you and me, where we understand each other, our dedication to what we did, and taking on that next challenge and just doing it and learning what we could do that we didn't think that we could do. This is no different. My friend, don't hold yourself back. Maybe you don't know how to do this, but if you light that fire, right, and you just say, you know what, I'm just going to do it. Suddenly, when you hit that buy button to get your Longmill MK2, all that fear is gone and you cannot wait to get that machine to start diving in. You want that feeling, or do you want the fear feeling that's going to hold you back another day? The cost of inaction, of procrastination, is stress, worry, fear, looking back at the past, being afraid, thinking that you can't, when everything inside of you can. And you just have to trust the process. And the minute you do, you will open up the wall to all these people on this side, thousands of people strong in the Facebook groups who are going to be here to help you, because they were exactly where you were, standing on that diving board, looking down at the pool, going, I don't see any water. But the water is there. You just don't see it because you don't know how you're going to do it. The water's there, and that water is that community of people that's going to help you do this. Down in the description is the link to get the Longmill. Just say, okay, fine, screw it, I'm going to do it. It doesn't really matter what CNC router you get. But if you've been looking at this for a while and feeling that pull, it's just time to go get it. If you get the Longmill, I do ask you to use the link down below, because that'll give me a little bit of credit, and I'll be able to buy a burger and a coffee. And I'll be here on the other side, along with all those other people. But until you say yes, there's a wall between you and an entire community of people who feel just like you do, or felt like you do, but decided to go for it. And the minute you hit that buy button, you'll be in the community, you'll be part of us, and you'll have people at your back. And you get this channel that's going to teach you exactly how to do it. Down in the description are lots of links, and there's a write-up down there. Make sure you go down and take a look at that and check out all the links, and there's a document for you that you'll want to download. I do want to ask that you take a second to hit the thumbs up button on this channel, which is just below this video, and comment down below. Tell me what you think about this whole thing. What's holding you back? Why aren't you going for it? And also subscribe to the channel, because you're going to learn how to do this stuff, and you're going to love it when you start doing it. With that, I am going to bid you adieu until the next video. And no doubt, somewhere down the line, you and I are going to be on the horn, and we're going to talk, and you're going to send me a picture saying, Garrett, check out what I made. And you're going to send that because you're proud as hell and you want someone to see it. And I am going to do the happy dance for you when you do. Until then, happy CNCing, my friend.